Talk about any criminal activity. Are you going to go after Jazz or are you going to go after
Telenor
Apple
or anyone, yeah.
Telenor? No,
Yeah.
you're going to
Yeah.
go after the person, right? The biggest factor of that is on election day, mobile network and internet services were turned off. And that played a huge role in A, discouraging voters from going out to vote, and B, in the counting process. I think the plan of the government is that everyone's going to be a property dealer. In this country, that seems to be the only sector. YouTube was blocked in Pakistan from 2012 up till 2016. Pakistani content creators suffered. Even if you want to use it for geostrategic purposes, Pakistani dramas, most of their views come from India.
Hello and welcome to Info Talks, a podcast where I put you in the room with some of the biggest thought leaders from around the world to speak with me on the ongoing restrictions on internet, particularly the unofficial ban on Twitter, and the ongoing sporadic disruptions of the internet in Pakistan. I have with me director of Bolo Bhi, Osama Khilji. Osama, welcome to Info Talks.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Osama, let me go ahead and ask my very first question. We have people like Omar Saif, who were part of the interim government. Then we had Prime Minister Anwarul Haq Kakar and, the information minister as well. They were all making their official announcements, greeting the incoming new government and the prime minister, while the Twitter actually remained banned in Pakistan. What do you really have to say about this paradox of relying on Twitter, but then at the same time, keeping it restricted to the general public?
I think there's one word for the caretaker government, and that's failure. They have failed in fulfilling their responsibilities of, holding an election that's free and fair. Aur mere khayal se, the biggest factor of that is on election day, mobile network and internet services were turned off. And that played a huge role in A, discouraging voters from going out to vote, and B, in the counting process. So I think a huge question mark that hovers over the election today is because of the failure of the caretaker government. And not to forget how they overstayed their welcome. And additionally, what they also did a lot of policy decisions, made a lot of policy decisions that were outside their purview. So the caretaker's government's role and responsibility is restricted to holding free and fair elections and ensuring that process goes smoothly. They did not do that at all, and they thought they were elected government officials who could make decisions, especially in the IT sector. So I think there's a lot that the new government has to fix now.
But how does it really reflect on a government or on an individual like Omar Saif, who's been in the business as well? And then he's making this tall claim of, bringing in business of, or perhaps a scaling up of, IT exports worth $10 billion US. Where do you think that really leaves any government, say even the new government that has come in, to probably, persuade and convince, say, the international market or software houses or, freelancers that, yes, we will be able to get this target when, in fact, in reality, you have such things taking place under your nose?
Look, I'm not going to undermine the IT sector. Growth, there has been growth. It is growing, but it could have been growing way more exponentially. So you're really reducing the potential of the IT sector. So, there has been growth, but the growth could have been maybe 2 times more or 3 times more if you created a welcome ecosystem. I know so many people, IT CEOs in Pakistan, who are selling their companies and trying to move abroad because either the FBR is bothering them, either the SECP is bothering them, or the Board of Investment is bothering them. One way or the other, unko koi issues aa rahe. So how are you going to create a conducive environment for IT businesses and the IT sector to perform? So these are all failures of the PTA and the IT ministry to ensure that you create a conducive environment in the country where people want to invest, where people want to do business, where young people can come up with ideas and translate them into startups and bring in the very much needed foreign exchange that the economy terribly needs right now.
But what do you have to say about, the absence of basic ingredients itself? Like when there is not even, stable internet for any freelancers or for any software houses. What do you go ahead and do? I mean, if I am a freelancer or if I am a software entrepreneur or anyone who's in the business, what will I end up doing then in that case?
Recently this journalist with Dawn, Sindhu Abbasi, did a cover story for the EOS magazine. And she spoke to IT professionals. She spoke to people who run IT businesses. Addressing this very digital question, in which one of the people said that they were getting a very good contract from a foreign client as an IT company, but there was digging happening outside their office, which cut off the internet cables, and they weren't able to deliver.
Wow.
So just things like this really make a difference. Pakistani freelancers are, I think, amongst the second largest number in the world,
largest, yes.
And they perform really well. The skills are amazing. Who do we give this credit to? Just to the young people who are using the internet, learning skills at home or at universities, and translating them into, great work online. And bringing in, the much needed foreign exchange. But in May 2023, when the internet was shut down for 4 days, the Pakistani freelancers profile had a notice on it on a lot of the freelance websites saying...
Even, I suppose, websites like Upwork,
Exactly,
Fiverr,
on these, saying that, there are no internet services in this country, so this freelancer may not be able to offer their services to you. So what kind of outlook do we expect then? And how do we expect to compete globally? I think the plan of the government is that everyone's going to be a property dealer in this country. That seems to be the only sector that is doing well.
But that's a limited resource. Not
and
everyone can
even
be
in real estate, blockchain and technology is being used. I know so many people who are running startups using blockchain for real estate. Even that won't be able to run, right? So like our parliament's now increasingly full of property dealers. Anyone who's anyone now is just a property dealer. So I think that's the only thing you can do: buy land and sell it. Computers, forget about them. You don't need them because internet, shut down hota rehta, and then you'll have internet, social media outages.
Right.
And the decisions are so arbitrary that you never know which website's going to be blocked the next day. And the perverse nature of these blocks is that in some instances, a lot of medical websites have been blocked. And medical students are complaining because वो कह रहे हैं इसमें obscenity है. तो आप biology किस तरह पढ़ाएंगे?
And I also, it makes the job difficult for even doctors who have to, make correct decisions in terms of diagnosis and so many other things. I think it makes their job difficult, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And, during COVID, during the lockdown, we saw the importance of the internet in education. Because you had people coming from Balochistan, from Western Khyber Pakhtunkhwa,
even telemedicine,
from Gilgit, Baltistan, from Azad Jammu Kashmir, who are studying in universities and hostels. The lockdown happens, they go back home, there's no internet in their areas. In Gilgit, they were climbing mountains in order to get signals so that they could attend online classes. So how do you expect to progress if, your universal service fund is not being used for the purpose? So,
and what do you say about businesses? I'm sure, plenty of people who are probably complaining in online spaces. Did they also reach out to you and I ask you that probably you should be raising voice on this very matter that, freelancers are getting affected? Did any people like that reach out to you as well?
I mean, there's so much reporting on that. But, a lot of people and businesses are afraid to speak up about it because we've seen how the state shut down businesses of people who criticize them. Take, for example, PTI politicians, their factories were sealed, right? Their offices are shut down. So even business people are afraid because of the political instability, because they think if they speak up or mention their problems, then politically they might get, there might be consequences for raising their voice.
And so now, let me speak about PICA itself. Section 35, if I have it correctly, it offers limitation of liability to platforms when in fact, it's probably say an individual post, etc. or something that probably PTA has really powers to block the access to. Platforms, on the other hand, have a protection in terms of not being subjected to any liabilities. What do you have to say really about this paradox in terms of, even unofficial practices where you end up getting, bans on the platform itself?
Yes, I think it's Section 38 of PICA that offers limited liability to
35.
platforms. So you must have seen the PICA version of the National Assembly website, which is actually outdated.
Outdated. Oh, my goodness.
So when you Google and look up PICA,
Right.
you would assume that the National Assembly website
Yeah.
would have the latest
Yeah.
version. So that is
That probably
even
is the
Section
case.
37 is 34 in that version,
Oh.
and 38 is
So it's the
35 in that
revised
version.
draft.
So the actual
Right.
new draft is Section 38 that talks about limited liability
Right.
of platforms. And that's the practice the world over, right? If I am using my mobile phone to
Yeah.
make a call and
Yeah.
say, oh, talk about any criminal activity.
Yeah.
Are you going to go after Jazz, or are
No.
you going to go after
Telenor
Apple
or anyone,
or
yeah.
Telenor? No,
Yeah.
you're going to
Yeah.
go after the person, right? So
Right.
that's why platforms the world over have limited legal liability when it comes to content that they're hosting.
Yeah.
But then, of course, what we're seeing is under PICA, under Section 9, Section 10, Section 20, 21, 24, you have liability on people for their speech, right? Which, of course, we're seeing how that's abused. So journalists are being, silenced through PICA. But platforms have their own mechanisms. So, for example, platforms have their community standards under which they decide what content can stay up and what can't, and they have different categories under it.
Yeah.
And I think more and more people need to use that, need to report content online if they think it violates.
Yeah. Let's say, if you're someone like, I'm just saying it in a hypothetical manner. Let's assume you're someone like Elon Musk, and you're looking at a country like Pakistan, and you're saying, probably there's something wrong. They're restricting access to X, but then at the same time, a person like Elon has multiple businesses like Starlink, like say Tesla, like say SpaceX, right? And then I'm wondering, if I have to say, as part of my efforts, relocating, any of my business, where should then a place like Pakistan really be falling? If I'm, say, probably carrying out a blanket ban on a platform like that or in that manner. And mind you, you know it for a fact that a platform like X is still facing quite severe financial issues as well. So, where does that then fall in your calculation of making, say, business decisions about, say, SpaceX, Tesla, or whatever, Starlink, etc.?
They're all going to India, right?
Yeah.
I think the latest stats say that Tata,
Yeah.
the company in India, is bigger than the entire economy of Pakistan. Because India is trying to make a conducive environment for tech businesses.
You said conducive environment.
Yes, because over time...
And what's a conducive environment? What does that really look like?
I think, first of all, you invest in education, right? You have your universities where your research is happening, the economy is flourishing, but the government then makes an effort to invite capital, to invite investors, and to do that. However, what we see is India is also, it's for geopolitical reasons, right? To counter China, the US companies are investing in India more. But having said that, a lot of the IT exports, a lot of the IT business is going to India for that reason.
Yeah.
Pakistan should try to compete in this region to make Pakistan competitive, to make Pakistani businesses and IT businesses competitive, so that more and more companies start to do business with us also. But that's not all, right? You need to encourage local innovation as well. So you need to make a conducive environment where registering a company is easy, where banking with companies is easy, where getting payments from abroad becomes easy. I myself face so many challenges just with the bank when I'm supposed to get a payment from somewhere outside Pakistan. And oftentimes there's a back and forth and the bank is saying, oh, iska ye naam aapne theek nahi likha tha, right? All sorts of issues. So I think all of these matters. The taxation policies for IT businesses also need to prioritize growth. Innovation needs to be prioritized, right? And Pakistani startups have been doing amazing things. There's so many Pakistani startups have, Careem, for example, was founded by Pakistani people. But they had to go to Dubai to set up that company because in Pakistan, it just was not connected enough. And Pakistani talent and Pakistani young people, especially in the technology sector, are brilliant, right? But most of them are now moving to Canada, to Australia, to the US, to the UK, to Europe. And those companies are attracting all the smartest brains from this region by incentivizing their, environment for them. Now, startup visas are being offered to people, and so many Pakistani young founders are applying for those startup visas and going abroad because those governments realize that the future has to be digital. The future is in IT and tech, and they have to encourage people to be there, to work there, and contribute to the economy.
So what you're suggesting is the bottom line is that you cannot move forward by, practicing
Censorship.
arbitrary
Exactly.
disruption of internet,
Yeah.
censorship, or saying,
Uncertainty.
yeah,
You cannot have uncertainty in the economy.
or restricting access to platforms.
Exactly, because you don't know, you're uncertain when what website is going to be blocked,
Yeah.
right? So that creates an uncertain environment for any business.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, about this legislator who just, happened to pass this resolution that, or table this resolution, the supposed resolution to ban social media platforms in Pakistan? Because I don't know what the rationale really is, but
I think he's out of touch with young people and he's out of touch with reality.
Right.
He's out of touch with what is happening in the world.
Yeah.
He's probably just sitting in his village and thinking about, maybe my help should not be using TikTok.
Yeah.
So let's ban all platforms so that
platforms.
my children can be disconnected from
Right.
the entire world. And there's nothing wrong with that if that is your choice, if
Yeah.
you want to, delve in agriculture. But you have to allow people to use the internet, to use platforms to profit from it,
Yeah.
right? When for 3 years, YouTube was blocked in Pakistan from 2012 up till 2016, Pakistani content creators suffered because globally in those 3 years, people collected subscribers, they were creating content, they were going viral,
there was
they were
such an opportunity
monetizing that.
cost to it, right?
A massive opportunity cost.
Wow.
Our content creators suffered because of that,
Yeah.
right? And even if you want to use it for geostrategic purposes, Pakistani dramas, most of their views come from India because you have the
Absolutely.
same language. And with
Absolutely.
YouTube and with
Yeah.
these platforms, you do not have these borders, right? And this is actually something I said to the Senate Human Rights Committee once, or it was the IT committee. There was a hearing in which they were trying to bring in PEMRA regulations on YouTube. And I said, and on Netflix. And I
Wow.
said, what you can do is you can use it for your soft power,
Absolutely.
right? Because Netflix is accessible the world over. So
Yeah.
you create good content.
Yeah.
You put it on YouTube and Netflix, and people in India will watch it, and their perception of Pakistan may change.
Right.
For example, if that is what your priority
Right.
is.
But let's say, if there's a decision to arbitrarily pull off the plug on social media apps, what would people like you and other fellow activists would really be doing to sort of, raise the issue?
I think the biggest factor is the Constitution. Constitution of Pakistan guarantees under Article 19 the freedom of expression and press freedom. And under Article 19A, it guarantees right to access to information. Right? So if you block these platforms, you cannot do that because the Constitution is giving you these freedoms and they have to be protected by the higher judiciary, right? So the high courts and Supreme Courts have to look at it in a way where they say, okay, these platforms are used for speech. We are in the modern times. Most of the population in Pakistan is young and they're digital natives, right?
Yeah.
They use cell phones, they use computers, they use technology, and they're very savvy at it and they're very good at it. They're learning a lot from it and they're expressing themselves.
Yeah.
So it's their fundamental right to express themselves even through social media, and it's their fundamental right to access information through social media. So if you're going to block YouTube, you're going to block the biggest source of knowledge in the world that exists today.
Do you think there's some glimmer of hope now that Islamabad High Court has actually issued notices? And I don't know, perhaps we might be a little too late by the time we actually publish this podcast, but is there any glimmer of hope for the fact that Islamabad High Court has actually issued notices to Information Ministry on this ongoing arbitrary ban on Twitter?
Yes, I think we have to look towards the courts, and the courts have to take action.
Yeah.
But the parliament and the government also has to show its spine.
Yeah.
Right? If you have come to government and if you are running the government, then you must represent the young people who came out to vote on election day. As controversial as the election results have been, now you are in government, right? So you need to prove to young people that you're working in their interest, and young people form the majority of the population, and they're looking towards the government for favorable decisions, especially related to technology, because it impacts them, right? And even if you want a political future in this country, you need to cater to the young population. And you need to cater to technology and social media. So you need to make decisions that will enable an environment where people are able to use technology for their purposes.
Yeah.
We are not a dictatorship. We are not a monarchy. And we are not a colonial, under colonial rule, right?
Yeah.
Even though our past is tainted with all of these things. So in
Yeah.
the past, we've had, colonial powers, we've had, royal families ruling us, and we've had military dictatorships. But we cannot have the same mindset anymore.
Yeah.
You have to tolerate dissent. You have to tolerate the voices of people, and you have to listen to them. Because if you don't, you will isolate them, and one day or the other, it will slap you back in the face.
Let me circle back and come back to that point of how internet disruption has sort of, affected people. There are so many people in the gig economy itself that have really been affected by, the disruptions of the internet itself. What do you think is really needed to be done when any government that walks in and says, poverty alleviation remains one of our primary goals? Why is it important that they probably need to realize that the constituency that they make a lot of rosy promises to are something that they really need to deliver to in the first place? So what would your advice be to them so that, they exercise more in prudent forms to actually care about these people that are getting affected by such disruptions?
See, I'll give you a small example. There are TikTokers living in rural Pakistan in villages. They're showing their rural life, they're showing their agriculture activities, and they have 10 million followers,
Yeah.
for example, and they're making money out of it, right? So this is just one small example of how even a simple farmer in a small community in rural Punjab or Pukhtunkhwa or Sindh can make a YouTube and a TikTok channel and actually earn from it by, just showing everyday life.
Yeah.
So then think of how many freelancers you can train.
Yeah.
And I think the past governments have run programs in Punjab and in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. There have been digital skill programs. They have trained thousands of people who've been trained on how to use freelance websites, for example, and who've been trained how to use technology to make money at home, right? There's a good friend of mine, Maria Omar, who ran Women's Digital League, in which what she did was she trained home-based women across Pakistan in rural communities in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Gilgit Baltistan, training women how to ghar baithe, aap jo hai, you use the internet, you use your computers, and you offer freelance basic services, and you earn in dollars from abroad, right? So the government needs to make these sort of programs more accessible to people. So train people in freelancing, for example. Train people in how to monetize YouTube or TikTok, right?
And especially, in a society like ours where women have a lot of social issues in terms of, having access to, say, physical spaces to earn their livelihood.
Yeah.
I suppose, going digital sort of helps them both in becoming empowered in terms of the skills that they can have to, employ themselves from the comfort of their homes. And then at the same time, have an access to make a fair shot of money.
Yeah, I think it has to be simultaneous. So, yes, we
So
must encourage,
this very, very aspect of women empowerment as well.
Yes.
Aren't really people thinking it through that it also adversely affects that very critical area of your demography as well?
Look, if you look at Bangladesh, their growth rate is 7 to 8% today. Why? Because they've been focusing on empowering women also economically.
Yeah.
If you go to Nepal, every other store is run by women. right? So in South Asia, you have women participation really increasing, and it makes economic sense because half your population is women, and if you're restricting their mobility and not allowing them to work, but also shutting down the internet and not allowing access to money-making opportunities, then you're losing out economically, right? If you have a population of 250 million people, 125 million are women. So why aren't you tapping into that potential digitally and otherwise? So let's not use the digital, freelancing excuse to say, okay, women should stay at home and work. We need to make mobility of women more easy also. We need to take harassment seriously, workplace harassment seriously, which discourages women from going out from working. But this has to be simultaneous,
and
right?
it also means, concluding on this note, it also means that, in times like the skyrocketing inflation, we have to allow access to more fairer means of, earning a fair income to people, and especially women, so that at least, middle-class households can really have a shot at surviving.
Absolutely. And I think the government that just took power, I think if I'm not wrong, the Prime Minister said that they're going to ensure that women get as much money in the same role as men. So they're talking about the gender pay gap, and that's encouraging. So I think they need to walk that talk. We have a female chief minister in the largest province who's already going to schools, who's already, looking into issues of harassment in her opening speech. So the hope would be that they would also realize the digital potential that women also have, as well as men, because obviously these issues impact everyone. But according to global research by the Economist Intelligence Unit, we've seen that Pakistan has some of the widest gender digital divide. So access to mobile phones, technology, and the internet is way disproportionate. So women are at the lower end of access of it, and men have greater access. So we also need to fill that gap and fix the gender digital gap that we have. And it just makes economic sense for us to do that.
Osama, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Osama Khilji. Thank you for joining us for this conversation with Mr. Osama Khilji. Our team works very hard to make this work possible, and it would mean the world to us if you could like, share, and subscribe our content. And if you'd like to stay informed about our upcoming podcasts and other work, please hit the bell button.